Are you or someone you know stuck in what feels like a downward spiral of depression? That's the question we're going to be asking ourselves today. We're going to be having a fascinating conversation, yes, about depression. But our guest author here today, whose book we're celebrating the launch, she has a message of hope. She has a message of positivity around this topic and from her own story. So I'm so excited to get into it. Our special guest author here today, who is launching the book, Stop the Downward Spiral, Everything the Person in Your Life Who Struggles with Depression Wishes You Knew. The author's name is Karen Gibbs. She's a longtime friend of Igniting Souls Publishing Agency. So excited to have this conversation here and celebrate this book. Karen is an author. She's a coach. She's empowering individuals to feel connected and positively impact the lives of others. And I'm so excited to share her with you, and she's excited to share her message. Let me introduce Karen Gibbs. Hi, Karen. I'm so glad that we get to have this conversation together.
Hi, Mike. Yep, it's really happy to be here, finally to launch the book. It's been a long time coming, and yeah, I'm really happy with the book, how it's come out, and the message for people. So pleased to be here.
Well, Karen, I know you are an inspiration to many in the Igniting Souls tribe and beyond. And I'm so glad that we get to talk about this a little bit. So first of all, can you talk to us a bit about your story, what really prompted this book when you felt like I need to write this book? Can you talk to us a little bit about where you're coming from and how you got here?
Okay. Well, initially it was my son, Matthew. He struggled with depression for about 12 years, and just under 6 years ago, he passed away. And he was in the process of trying to help other people who struggled with depression or anxiety. And he had plans in place, things that he was going to do. When he unexpectedly passed away, and it just was such a shock. It threw me into, well, I can't even describe it really. It was just such a shock. And I felt that as a bit of time went on, that I needed to continue his message. That's the main thing. So I went through his writings, everything that he had in place that he was trying to do, and I decided I couldn't do it how he had, what he planned to do. I couldn't do that, but I could write a book. So I decided to use his message to empower other people to move ahead in their life and help them with depression and anxiety as Matthew wanted. So it's really a culmination of my experience, what I went through, helping him through those 12 years, what I've been through since, which clearly grief and depression sort of go hand in hand, and the passion to leave him a lasting legacy and help other people finish or at least continue what he was trying to do. So that's how I got here with the book. And it's taken me a lot longer than it should to write a book. But obviously, dealing with the grief and everything at first was very hard.
I can't imagine. But you know what? Whatever the timing was, it's the perfect timing. And the fact that it is out now is the perfect time for it to be out.
That's
and I know that there are people here tuning in now and catching this video later who are like leaning in now. You're like, oh boy, I need to hear something about this. Whether they struggle with it themselves, or I love your subtitle. Again, the book is Stop the Downward Spiral, Everything the Person in Your Life Who Struggles with Depression Wishes You Knew. And so this is not just a book for those who struggle with depression, but maybe even more so for those who know someone, who love someone who goes through this, and you don't know what to say sometimes, like, have you found that to be true? Have you found some responses of people, they mean well, but it's not exactly helpful?
Yes, that we've all been in that position. It's not something new to any of us. We've all been there. And I always say you don't know until you know. That's, you really need to learn a lot about these things. We all do. And I have found that a lot. People, they mean well, they don't know what to say, but they'll say things like, well, just pull yourself together. Come on, just pull yourself together. Go outside and get some fresh air, or, you know, they
Seems
mean
motivational, right?
it does, but it's not the right thing to say to someone who is in that position, because when they get into that depression, especially if it goes down into a very deep depression, they actually lose themselves in the process. They lose, you know, their self-worth, their self-esteem. They just don't realize what's really going on within themselves even. And when other people come at them and say things that doesn't feel helpful to them, they feel there's something wrong with them, something they've done wrong even. They can quite often feel like that. And then if people say, just pull yourself together, again, they feel like, well, what am I doing wrong? What's wrong with me, basically. And so the book, it is designed, has been written to people who have a loved one that want to help them, or a friend, family, whatever it may be. They want to help, but they don't know what to say or do. And there is hope. There is plenty that you can do. Some people will live with depression long term, but I go through a lot of things in the book where they can live a very valuable life, even though they may be struggling with depression. It doesn't mean it's the end, and there's nothing wrong with them as a person. It's something they're struggling with, something they've got, like someone may get cancer or someone may break their leg. It's something they're dealing with. There's nothing wrong with them, and that's the important thing that we all need to know in order to help our loved ones. So
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
You make a vital distinction there between the difference between seeing it as an identity, something that you are, versus, like you said, something that you're struggling with.
That's
And
it.
and when it's something you're struggling with, like you said, it's not the end, right?
That's
It's
right.
just, it's a season, it's a phase. It may be longer than you want. It may be very long,
That's
but
right.
it's a struggle. And I love your emphasis on not attributing it to a personality, not
Yeah.
to your identity, but
Mhm.
a struggle. And
That's
struggles
right.
we can overcome and walk through together. That's so
That's
good.
exactly right. And that's the whole thing. It's keeping that connection. It's so important, with your friend or your loved one who's struggling. It's keeping that connection and not isolating, or not, they can feel isolated, because they really do. They're in a different state of mind, and they really do. They're not thinking as rationally as they perhaps would. And they do think something is wrong with them, especially if it's coming at them from other people. So that connection is so important.
Well, we are in the middle of a highly valuable and fascinating conversation with Karen Gibbs, author of Stop the Downward Spiral, everything the person in your life who struggles with depression wishes you knew. And Karen has written this book from personal experience, from writings from her son who has passed, and she's wrestled with the grief, she's wrestled with the aftermath. And Karen, I don't want to say that it's ever done. Do you think that it will always be a struggle, or what's your perspective? I know the tragedy of your son's passing was several years ago now, and I can't imagine how that sticks with you. But if I could ask, for someone maybe who's not 6 years down the road now, what do they have to look forward to? What's your perspective on it at this point, and what do you project experiencing in the future? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Basically, grief and depression do go hand in hand. I say in the book, you actually, when you're struggling with grief, it is the same symptoms as depression. Like when you go to a doctor, they'll ask you a set of questions. And if you answer yes to a certain number of those questions, you're diagnosed with depression. Well, grief is the exact same symptoms, but they won't diagnose depression, because they say you have a reason to feel the way you do. But I believe that people who are depressed also have a reason to feel the way they do, because it comes from a loss in the beginning. There's a loss somewhere. If you delve back into conversations with the person, there's always a loss that starts the depression. And with grief, like for me, anyone that's suffering grief, that especially if it's a shock or if it's a child and you didn't expect it to happen. I mean, Matthew was 31. He wasn't a child as such, but he was my youngest. He was my baby. He always will be my baby in my heart, you know. And 6 years down the track, I still feel the grief and that loss will never leave. It's a feeling in my chest that I always have. But I believe you grow around the grief. If it makes sense, like when it first happens, it's like it takes over your entire life. The grief is enormous, and people say in time the grief will grow smaller. It doesn't. That grief still stays big. You will always mourn and miss that person, especially, well, I feel especially if it's your child. But you as a person, as long as you don't just give into it, isolate yourself and sort of wallow in it, I suppose you could say, as long as you're trying to overcome and grow, you will actually grow so much bigger as a person. The grief will stay the same, but you will grow bigger around the grief. That's my belief, and that's what I feel I've done. And that's basically because I surrounded myself with people in the Igniting Souls tribe, through writing this book, through coaching with Daphne, through Carey is words. It's so, that's my son so writing that. So proud of you, Mum. Thank you, Simon. So you actually grow bigger. And when you look outwardly from yourself to other people, you see that other people, everyone's suffering. It's not only me. Everyone is suffering with something out there. And when you look at other people and want to help them, it helps you to grow, and you can grow through what you're suffering with. And I was able to write this book, get this message out, which was so important to Matthew. So therefore it became so important to me, because he's no longer here to do it. He's my child. You know, it's that real, my big why, as you would put it. But it truly is something you're always going to have that grief, but you don't have to, it will not destroy you. It can actually make you a better person. And that's what anyone, even people that have depression, that's what they have to look forward to, that they can live with something and still excel, still live a fruitful, happy life. And that's my message, basically. And that was Maddie's message.
I love that. When you're talking about growing around the grief, now the grief is never going to get smaller. It's never going to go away, but growing around the grief, I had this picture of like sticking a nail into a tree, right? And it's there. It probably is painful, right, to the tree, but the tree doesn't die. It doesn't. It just grows, and then years and years, and it will have grown around it. It's still there. It's still part of it, but the tree is still able to grow, still able to bear fruit, and live a life. And you would say you can even grow bigger and stronger because of the grief. And that's such an inspiring message.
Yeah, you actually do grow bigger. But at first, when you first start coming out of the grief, like for me, I couldn't take it in. I shut down, completely shut down, and I just cried for I don't know how long. And I shut down because my mind could not take it in. I couldn't believe it. But as you go on and you come out of it a little bit, you accept it a little bit more, and then you go back into it, because you accept it to a certain point and then it becomes overwhelming. So you shrink back again. But each time you come forward, you grow a little bit more. And I think it's accepting that and moving forward, because at first when you start to accept it, you feel guilty. There's a guilt because you think,
Mm,
how can I be going on with life without my child? How can I
mm,
do that? It seems like you're betraying them in some way, which is all in hindsight. When you look back, you feel like, oh, that's a bit silly, I suppose, really, but you feel that. And what you
sure.
feel
Yeah.
is important, and you've got to not try to push it. That's the main thing. And it's the same with depression. Don't try to push it like there's something wrong with you. It's something that has happened to you. And you will come through it with time and care and love and the proper support. You will come through it, but don't push. That's the whole thing. Don't push, and be around people that will be beneficial to you, people that aren't accidentally, unintentionally saying the wrong things that are making you, if you feel like you're going to retreat. And hopefully this book will really help people to know how to deal with their friends and loved ones who are struggling. That's my hope. And the feedback I've had so far, people are just really loving it, really loving the message and
Mm,
feeling that they've learned something and that it will be beneficial in their life. So that feels really good to know that it's helping people.
I love it. This is a fantastic and timely message from Karen Gibbs. Hey, if you're watching this and you have someone in mind, someone who maybe needs to hear this encouragement, like Karen just shared, of there's not something wrong with you, it's something that's happened to you, and don't push it, and just lean into it, and it's okay to grieve. If you're thinking about someone, go ahead and tag them in this conversation so they can come back and watch this and hear Karen's words and be blessed by the message in her book. Maybe you know someone who is very close to someone who is grieving, who's depressed, and they could be encouraged by this message as well, because they don't know what to say, they don't know what to do. They're scared of saying the wrong thing. Go ahead and tag them here in this in the comments, and they'll be able to come back and watch this video on their own time. I think it'll really bless a lot of people. Karen, can we talk about the word depression? There comes a stigma along with that, right? Like, no one wants to be depressed. No one, and if you are, then you feel like, oh, you don't want to let people know that. And I think people will tend to keep it to themselves. Can you talk a little bit about what that is like, and what you would say to someone who feels like there's a stigma attached?
Well, this is the main reason why we need to have these conversations, and we need to really have it out there so that people, that if they do fall into that depression or that season in their life where they're struggling with something, that they feel they're able to talk about it. And this is where we need to really work on our attitudes towards people who are struggling. It is something, because generally from as long back as I can remember, if people have depression, it's like they are judged. It is like you are judging them as if they've, it's something they've done themselves, and they could just pull themselves out of it. And why don't they? So there is that stigma. But it really isn't that way at all. It is something that has happened, as I say, through, it's described as beyond blue here in Australia as a series of events that's happened in your life. Like, we all have little things happen every day. Things go wrong and it just keeps happening. And if we don't really address those as they come along, you're struggling with those, time goes on, and then suddenly something big might happen. And it's usually a loss, as I've said before. You might lose your job, lose a relationship. There's always something at the back of it. It's a loss, but it comes on top of a series of events, and you sink into a depression without even half the time realizing it's happened. But you think there's something wrong with you, and especially if you're getting comments like, pull yourself together. Why are you like this? Write these questions in the book. And questions I write in the book in a way that the way you could ask questions to make it a bit different, to make the person feel that they can open up to you and not feel like there's such a problem that they can't get over it. But if people don't know and they say things like, pull yourself together, as an example, because that's quite often the first thing that's said,
Mm.
that person who is struggling will feel like they need to isolate, come away from you. And not they love you, they're still a close friend, whatever, but they feel like, oh, I feel so down, I need to like not listen to that, I need to be away, what's wrong with me? And they go off on their own thinking there's something really wrong with them. And once I write this in the book, once that isolation has begun, that's the beginning of the downward spiral, because everyone needs connection. And if they are isolated away, the first thing they're going to do is try to connect with something else that's going to support them, like alcohol or substance. And quite often, alcohol is the first thing people will reach for because, one, it's readily available, and two, it's quite often socially acceptable. So they think, oh, this makes me feel a little bit better, and I don't have to worry about, I can get through my day if I just have a drink or two. And this was unfortunately the trap that Matthew fell into. And he really did think that it was making him better. But as time went on, he then became addicted to the alcohol. And then all the anxiety feelings and all the feelings he was having, he didn't know whether it was the need for alcohol or the initial depression. So it made his problem twice as bad.
Wow.
And this was part of what he wanted to tell people. First of all, there was a twofold message he had. Firstly, people, you need to support someone who's struggling. He wanted to get the message out to carers and friends and family of ones who are struggling, what they need to do to help them. And the second thing is, for the people who are struggling, don't reach for alcohol, don't reach for drugs. You are going to be in a far worse place than the initial depression. That was his twofold message, and he had the most beautiful plan to help people. And, I've written it in the book, his plan, what it was to help the people. And he had that all in place, starting fundraisers when he passed away. So it just needed to be finished, and the message needed to get out there because it is such a good message and so helpful. And it really will help so many people. And I feel like, I was just saying to my sister earlier, I feel like I'm so proud of this book, so happy with this book. And I can say that in a humble way, not as in no pride attached to me, because I don't feel like it's my message. I feel like he's the one that's done all this, and it's him that it goes to. So I feel like I can say how good the book is without making it sound like I'm talking myself up, as it were, because that's not how I feel, but it's a good message.
What an amazing legacy piece. I know Michelle here is chiming in to really celebrate the legacy of this book, and really combining his writings, his thoughts, his encouragements through your voice and your experience. And what a powerful combination that is, to be able to carry on and with such a strong voice of experience, and a message of hope, born out of this tragedy. And it's really inspiring to hear you talk and hear you share. I know there are people here in our live stream today who it's like, oh boy, yep, I need this, or I know someone who needs this. And so I love when you mentioned, first of all, you said the start to this downward spiral is this idea of loss. There's always some sort of loss that begins depression and grief. And then that first step into this downward spiral is isolation, right? And so the antidote to that is connection.
Absolutely.
And it's I know you found a tribe, and there's someone here who needs to find some positive connection. A very poignant point you made, that it's the person who is going down this spiral is going to connect with something, right? We humans are created to connect with people, to
We
live in
are.
community, to
Mhm.
connect, and we'll connect with something. And so I know there's someone here watching this who knows someone who may be starting this downward spiral. I haven't heard from them in a few weeks. I know they had a rough patch, and they're probably okay. But wait, let's think. That person's reaching out and connecting to something or
That's
somebody
right.
maybe that they shouldn't. And
Yeah.
so maybe to this conversation is that reminder, hey, you know what? Let's shoot a text.
Yeah.
Well, actually, what I can't even prescribe the best course of action. What are we talking about, Karen? If someone today is like, oh, there's someone I haven't heard from in a while. I know they went through a rough patch. What's something that someone could do today, this afternoon, tonight, for the person that keeps coming to their mind?
Well, definitely reach out. Definitely. It never ever hurts to reach out to someone, even just to say, send even a text message is something that person then knows they're being thought about. Um, I want to inspire people really to live their life, to live a full life, to be connected with each other and to help each other through with their problems. And if you knew someone was struggling a bit and you haven't heard from them for a while, and we're all busy, we've all got our own lives to live, and it's easy for friends, loved ones to slip through the cracks. It's very
Hmm.
easy. Even just a quick text message would really, really make a difference to that person. And it's quite often the smallest acts of kindness that people will relate to, and it will really make them feel like they can cope. It just is very important that they know that you are thinking of them, you love them, and want the best for them.
Hmm.
And even I say in the book, because I give lots of strategies in the book for how to help people. And one of them is even like we sometimes feel we have to fix everything.
Hmm.
Sometimes we don't have to fix everything, we just have to be there. And even sitting quietly with someone, just sitting in silence, just being a silent witness to their pain means so much when they are struggling. You don't have to go, oh, I won't call them, because sometimes we can worry, I won't give them a call because I don't know what to say. You don't really have to say anything. They just need to know that you care enough to want to sit with them or talk to them on the phone. And we don't have to fix it. It has to come from them. Inwardly, they have to do the work to get themselves, they have to surround themselves with the right people, but we have to make sure we're not pushing them away. We have to make sure that we are open, that they feel like, hey, I can go to Mike, or I can go to Ricky, or I can give Karen a call. They need to feel open, not feel like they are isolated and feel like they have to stay away. So it's just that whole difference on how we respond to them. We don't have to have all the answers. We definitely don't have to have the answers. We just need to help them with that connection to begin with.
Hmm. That's good. I know I'm guilty of jumping right to fixing sometimes, right? Or trying to think of the right thing to say. It's like, ooh,
Yeah,
I can think of something really encouraging to say, which might be true.
yeah,
Kind,
yeah,
encouraging words are always good.
yeah.
But sometimes the best thing may just be to be, like you said, um, and that's a good word. If you're a fixer, if you're a talker, give a thumbs up here. It's like you know who you are. I know that it's all well intentioned, but a great reminder to just be, to reach out and to be available to someone.
Yeah,
So good. Well, Karen, we're
absolutely.
in our final minutes of this conversation.
That is
It's
amazing.
it's flown by, right? It's funny. Right before we went live here, Karen and I were connecting, and she says, "Oh, half hour feels like such a long time." I said, "Karen, it's gonna go. It's gonna fly by. It's gonna be over before you know it." And
Oh,
here we are.
that is
So,
amazing.
Karen, you have touched many people's lives, even in this past half hour, as fast as it has gone by. Um, Ricky is doing a fantastic job dropping some links where they can connect with you. That link tree has all the links
Yeah,
there that they can connect with you. And I also want to make sure that people are aware that they can get a free ebook, The Quiet Mind, which is, you said, a guide for meditation.
Yeah, it's a guide to meditation for anyone that's interested in learning how to meditate. It's, as it says, the quiet mind. It helps you to quiet your mind and, move on with life. And yeah, that's free on my website. You can just download it straight to your email.
Love it.
Very
Yep, that
happy to do
is
that.
at karengibbs.com.au. That's there in the chat as well, that you can go and download that free ebook from Karen straight from her website.
Yeah.
Karen, this has been a lovely conversation. I'm so glad to be able to have sat down with you, and thank you so much for sharing your time, your message. I have seen people in the chat here. Your family is in full support. Also, I saw a couple of your fellow tribe members from Australia. I know you've got a great talk about network of people around you.
Yeah.
You've got some great people there and as well.
We
So
do.
there's Angelo.
Thanks, Angelo. Yep, he's from the tribe here.
Excellent. And
Yeah.
so many people are very proud of you, the work you've done. I know it's been a long time coming, but it's out at the perfect time. This is the book, Stop the Downward Spiral, Everything the person in your life who struggles with depression wishes you knew. And we have a little bit of a taste of that from our conversation here today. Karen, thank you so much. We appreciate you. We love you and we support you. And we're so proud of everything that you've accomplished. And we look forward to so many great things from this book and through your work.
Thanks so much, Mike. It's really been lovely talking to you today and getting that message out there. It's lovely. Thank you.
It's been an honor. Well, everyone watching or catching this later on, thank you so much for spending your time and participating in this message. Make sure you go pick up the book and share it with someone who needs it. Maybe share this live stream with someone. There it is. Stop the Downward Spiral. Grab your copy today and make sure that it's a blessing to someone in your life. So thank you so much for joining us here today. This has been the Igniting Souls Publishing Agency global live stream celebrating Karen Gibbs' new book. And thank you so much, Karen. It's been a pleasure. Again, we'll connect with you next time, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks. Bye-bye.